We're good. Cool. Hi, everyone. So, like I've said, I'm Sam, and I work on ChromeOS at Google. And one of the things I do on ChromeOS is I own ChromeOS.dev, which is our developer documentation and blog case study kind of site for all things developing on and for ChromeOS. And back in May, we relaunched this site on Sanity and Astro, which is quite convenient for the third talk today. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is why we chose Sanity specifically, and some of the ways that we kind of think about content modeling that really led us to Sanity. So I'm going to start over in our GitHub repo. So ChromeOS.dev is open source. You can poke around our code at github.com/ChromeOS/ChromeOS.dev if you want to see kind of how we do all this. So let's talk about content modeling for a second. When we were looking to migrate off of flat markdown files into a content management system, we kind of had two requirements. The first requirement was we needed content to be block content to be available to us in JSON, not as pre-rendered HTML, because we do some weird things with content sometimes. It might not look weird the first time you see it, but it turns out when you're trying to like really structure content, it gets a little weird. And some CMSs aren't set up to handle the way that we think about content modeling. So what makes the way that we think about content modeling different? Typically when you do content modeling, you have your schemas. And if you build a starter Sanity, I believe it gives you the schemas folder. I don't think I made the schemas folder. And this is for all of your content models, basically. That's good, that's fine. Where things get a little bit different for us is as we start to model our content, we start to notice some patterns. And those patterns wind up falling into like three different types of models. The first is large content models, which are like the whole thing, the actual thing you go into a forum and edit. The second one is fields. And we're going to dive into how we think about fields in a second. But the second thing is fields. And those are the individual pieces that make up your content model. But one of the things we really like about Sanity is those fields can be what makes up your content model or reused in their entirety as things that make up part of your block content. So one of the things we have defined here is a YouTube field. So that YouTube field can be used in a straight content model. It can be used as part of a content model, an object somewhere else. It can be used directly in a field. It's that same structure that is used everywhere, which A, makes it easy to maintain and develop in Sanity. But B, when we go to render it, it makes it easy as well, because anytime we see a YouTube field, we can use the exact same component to render it. We don't need to have custom handling for where this YouTube field actually showed up in our content model. Maybe someone configured it a little bit differently. It just is the YouTube field, and we can use it. The other thing, and this is what makes how we think about content modeling maybe a little different, is we have this idea of sub schemas. So on our site, we have documentation, we have case studies, we have blog posts. And there are portions of those content models that are the same across each. Hero images, how we manage featuring. And these are kind of like content models that live inside of other content models. It's not just a field, it's like a fully thought through like smaller item that gets reused amongst our content types. And this is where kind of Sanity's flexibility really shines for us is we can build not just content models, but we can build sub schemas that we can reuse across content models. And we can build reusable fields that can be used inside of our block models or our sub schemas or directly on our schema. That flexibility in modeling content really sets Sanity apart for us. And it's why we wound up going with it. We couldn't find something that did it as kind of easily or we thought would be as maintainable as this. So this is my favorite Sanity feature, is just the flexibility of building content and the flexibility of that block model. So let's take a look at what a subschema might look like. So we have a hero banner that exists on our site. You can see it here. Nope. Here. So we've got this hero banner here. We have it in news. We have it in, and it gets used both here and inside of an actual piece of content. And it gets used in case studies. It looks a little bit different, but the content model is pretty much the same. So instead of creating our own separate, like each one of those areas where that might get used, creating our own content model for that, and maybe being tempted to tweak it a little bit because it looks a little bit different, even though the content model is actually the same, we have a hero subschema. And this is the media to display, whether it's a YouTube video or an image. And no matter where this gets used, it will always be either a hero video or a YouTube image, and it will always be structured the same. And then we can go use that in our banner. And the banner is our background images. And when we put it all together, we get the background images and the hero image. So combining these subschemas of like objects that kind of sort of work together, we can build something like featured. Featured has our eyebrow, it has our titles, it has all of the different things that we need, pulling from these subschemas. And then we reuse them wherever we need a featured turn on and off or a subschema turned on and off. It's a reusable bit of content modeling that throughout our site. And with the GraphQL queries we can make, sorry, not GraphQL, although GraphQL would work. I forget the Sanity language for querying, but anyway, that language, which is GraphQL-like, we can create one set of strings that we can concatenate in for whenever something is an app type. We just grab that string and can reuse the query for that and reuse all of the custom handling we have for that. And then fields, we have something similar. So fields, we have different types of fields for different pieces of things. So we use abbreviations a lot. So an abbreviation is an actual HTML tag where you have a string and then a description of that string, kind of like a tooltip, but built into HTML. So we wanted to be able to use this, so we built an abbreviation field, which we then can use in our blocks. Instead of defining our blocks in our content models themselves, we define them here in fields. And we've got a couple different types of blocks. And this is where things get a little weird. So we've got a full block that has all the different fields that we could possibly use. Then we have an inline block. So some of our content, some of the content in our long form blocks, think like messages, like a pop-up message that says, hey, info, check this out. You probably don't want to have all of your different editing options available in there. You probably just want a couple of them. So an inline block is where we can define subsections of editor features that we would like to make available in this. And we even have a restricted inline block, which is an even more restricted version of that, and a restricted block. So we don't just have one set of long form text WYSIWYG options for a piece of content. We have multiple different ones for the context of where you're writing. So messages get one, tables get a restricted inline block. So tables, things inside of tables can be bolded or can be italicized or can have a code syntax highlighting, but you can't put a YouTube video in a table, at least for us. So having these different types of blocks, we can then reuse that thought of how we restrict content wherever we need to use that. And that's kind of where the real power of Sanity comes in, is this ability to have context-dependent block content and context-dependent reusable pieces of content structure that all is just JSON at the end. I don't need special handling. I don't need to write my own XML parser. I don't need to write a regex-based HTML parser. I don't need to teach my CMS about my HTML. I don't need to tightly couple that. It's just JSON, and because it's just JSON, I can then go render it however I want. So let's take a look at what all this looks like kind of in practice. So here's a post. This is my development version of our CMS. And here's a blog post I started to write and then didn't wind up writing. Everything kind of looks normal as is, but then we get to something like body. And in body, we made our own link, for instance, because for links, we want to be able to link to a reference of a piece of content or a URL or a specific anchor and have different rules around that. We have, like I said, YouTube is here, but YouTube can be a field as well. We have code blocks. We've got messages. Here's an example of messaging where the text, there's a different set of editor options for what you can put inside of a message versus what you can put inside of block content or the long form block content. We have, if we scroll on up to promotion, we have hero media. If we want to include hero media, here's our sub schema for hero. If we want to feature it, here is our sub schema for featuring it. If we want to have a theme, here's our sub schema for theme. So all the different pieces kind of come together to build this piece of content. And so this is our post, but if we go to, let's say, a case study, if we go to promotion, feature this content. If we feature this content, it's the same featuring options. So this is where we take our sub schema, take all the different ways that we kind of manage the reusable bits of our content modeling and have them come together into something that is helpful for us, something that we can really really easily manage both as editors and as developers. Yeah, so that's kind of what I got. And yeah, if you want to check this out, like I said, everything is open source, ChromeOS.dev/CMS, or github.com/ChromeOS/ChromeOS.dev. The CMS folder is all of our Sanity code. If you want to see how we do things with Astro, that's the site folder. Yeah, thank you all.